So Bluurg TV is here at Rockaway Park with Steve Ignorant and Dick Lucas. A rare experience, the two of them together for one interview. I think this is the first time, Steve, you've been to Rockaway Park.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and Dick's been here quite a lot, obviously. What do you think of the place?
Oh, brilliant, amazing. I didn't know what to expect. I'd heard stuff from other people, but till you see it yourself, you don't. I thought, oh, it's going to be one of those dog shit everywhere. I'm going to be tripping over barbed wire and bongo drums going on. And here it is, really organised, but organised chaos, and I love it. And I've already sorted. I've already got my eye on a few pieces that go back in the car. Don't tell Mark. So,
in terms of what to expect, everything's unexpected, really. And I know.
Very zen of you, Dick. It's a very zen of you. You expect the unexpected.
Yeah, it is. I like things that do that.
Yeah.
Like nothing works, but everything works in a way.
Yeah.
And the whole setup they got is sort of like dream world of what the ideal anarchic living space was sort of meant to be when it wasn't just for a week in a field of sharing stuff. This is like a permanent setup that just builds and develops. It involves more and more people over time. I mean, every time we come here, within like 3 weeks ago or whatever, and it's all moved about again. My guess is he's got this pickup thing, what do you call it, digger, whatever it is, but it moves very large objects like cars and that. You're just like, well, let's put that over there, and you can just move all this enormous, weighty furniture about, and it's like a dream scrapyard. Something else.
Yeah.
But the very way they cooperate with other people, and where money is at the bottom of the part of what's important, and creativity is at the top, it's just ideal. Now, there are other places like this, but I can't think of many or any in this country that comes anywhere close to Rockaway.
Yeah.
Bit of a Rockaway advert going on.
Yes.
Well, Steve, you got a gig here tonight with Slice of Life, and Dick's got a gig in Bristol with Culture Shock.
Unfortunate timing, really.
Yeah.
But that's the way it worked out. We both got gigs within 5 miles of each other, after 16 months of none at all.
Yeah.
And how are you feeling about that? A gig with a live audience?
I'm feeling all right actually, because I did did a gig a few weeks ago down in New Cross in London, so that was all seated, only 60 people allowed. Did 2 days there, but for Slice of Life, what we do, that was perfect. So I don't mind if people sit down at a Slice of Life gig. It's more of it's more of a sort of jazz clubby type.
Well, because what's his name? He put some up on his YouTube channel, and we nicked a couple of songs.
Right.
Including Ziggy Stardust.
Oh, right, okay.
That was curious, surprising, and you completely pulled it off.
Yeah, I know.
Without being embarrassed or anything like that. That it represented the old wave of pre-punk rock and that. Yeah, what's people going to be like a regular gig? There's no regular gigs yet, unless we build it all back up again. If we're allowed to, will people completely uncork all their bottled up energies for the last year and a half and go completely mad down the front, or come to the gig with a sort of like socially distanced mindset that's been set in everybody, whether they like it or not, and sort of, okay, how close can we get to touching? Can we go wild down the front? Is all this sweat flying about going to bring me diseases, and we'll all be a bit nervy? Well, we're going to find out. I don't know. In terms of playing, it's just going to be exhilarating. And it's like, if we mess up, it's not our fault. We've done this for a year and a half.
So what's the best part of doing a live gig?
I think after this long not doing one, it might just be the actual exercise involved. And, keep yourself fit without even knowing it by exerting yourself for an hour on stage, more than occasionally. So from a personal health point of view, gigs are good for you. It makes you smoke less or more, whichever it is, drink less or more. Actually, I drink more when I'm touring, and I smoke more when I'm touring. But it all comes sweating out in that hour of.
Yeah.
That's the very root core of why we're still doing it.
Yeah.
That energy, that involvement, and that interacting with people watching and feeding it back, and it's just like a feedback loop. It's indescribably good and makes up for all the travelling and all feeling completely knackered afterwards. And
also I think part of that exhilaration is as well that you think, oh, you know, I ain't done it for so long. There was part of me that was like, do you know what, do I want to do it again? Well, the minute you do it, yeah, you do, because that's what you do, you know. And I think, once you get that interaction from and not necessarily from actually performing at the gig, but just meeting people again.
It's also, it's a social life, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, other people meet regular people down the pub once, 2 or 3 times a week or whatever, and that's their close mates. And I found in a band you form close mates over a period of years as opposed to weeks, because you see them maybe once or twice a year at most in different towns or even different countries, and because you see them again, it's like, oh, I actually know this person. You have a good chat, and then you don't see them again for 6 months. Then you have another good chat, and you get a good friendships building up over years. It's a really strange way, but it is a social network. Just it's more spread apart in time and space. Blimey.
Yeah.
The phrase time and space just got into this quite early on, I must say.
So, what's for you been a standout gig or tour? And I know that's a really difficult question to answer because there's been so many, but something that stood out to you that you'd never ever forget, no matter what.
How many gigs you done?
I have no idea.
Really?
I have no idea.
You didn't write them all down?
No, I was never like that. Once I went indoors and shut the door, that's it. That's that tour finished. There's been so many. I mean, one that sticks out, but I always repeat it. It's when Crash played at Exeter, and we'd done a tour of the West Country, and I got so fed up. Every night was a fight between the Truro punks and the blah blah punks, or the Panstow or the hoo-ha, and all that. Every fucking night, and I was like, right, this night we've got to Exeter, all right, that's it. Any trouble tonight, and I'm just gonna go for a mullery. So walked into the bar, and there they are, these 3 boneheads standing there giving me the eye and all this. I'm like, and I thought to myself, don't even think about it, lads, because you've picked the wrong person, the wrong time tonight. Next minute, boom, in through the door come 20 Down syndrome kids with their carer, and they all rush around like mad and all this. And one of them runs up this the big skinhead, and he goes, "Oh, I love you." Like this, and the skinhead looks down and he goes, "Yeah, I love you too." All right, Steve, Crash fans. And that whole night, again, that interaction, but Down syndrome kids were just having such a ball, and everyone was letting their inhibitions down. It's one of the best gigs I've ever experienced, and they all came up on stage at the end of the gig and played the drums. Some of them whacked the shit out of them, other ones just sort of give it a dink and rushed off. But I said to the bloke, how on earth did you get these kids down here? And he went, well, I told the people at the hostel where they stay, I told them I was taken to a concert. I just didn't say what sort of concert, so they assumed it was a classical concert. So, and that's one that stands out for me.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. That's very close to my heart. That. So, and also, what that did was got rid of my. This might sound weird to people now, but I used to be quite frightened of people like that, Down syndrome. It's a childhood thing. I've lost it completely now.
Yeah.
Because going off track a bit, I'm sorry about this, but where I grew up in Dagenham, you didn't see a lot of people. You didn't see a lot of Down syndromes. You didn't see a lot of people with different abilities as you do now.
Yeah.
So
I think it's
they were kept away.
It's a fear of the unknown, in a sense. But if you don't meet people who are different in any way, you're just going to assume the worst, because the worst tends to get fed through the mainstream media, which is why racism exists, and all the other isms basically are down to like ignorance of what people are actually like.
Yeah.
I swear, if everyone closed their eyes for a year, we'd all make a lot of different friends than we would make normally.
Yeah.
Because it's all visual, this thing. It's like what people say and how they think coming through what they say has no colour or creed or anything really. Separate from the meaning, and then the understanding is what creates friendship and communication. All the good stuff. And then visually, once you get taught that they're a bit too different, they're not like us, and it's just like, why does everybody have to be like us? Why? What's the point of that? It'd be so boring. In terms of memorable gigs, I did actually write them all down.
Right. You anorak.
I told where is my anorak? It's behind me. I like all the tracks we played, how many times we played each song, support bands, how many people turned up, when it was, and all that sort of thing. And I've now reached a silly number of gigs. Good job it's written down, because I can't remember how many it is. But it's approximately 2,000 something.
Right.
But I was just showing off with numbers. What I've got to do is pick one that's especially special. There we are. Citizen Fish playing in the desert outside Las Vegas. And in this bit of desert, there's a big stone. How big? Doesn't matter. It's a big rock, basically, that's carved out on the inside, or just eroded on the inside, and full of dust on the floor and sand, as you might expect. And they got like a small couple of lights and a generator, and they settled up, no stage or nothing, like 2 mics just for the vocals. And about 150 kids come out from Las Vegas. And I mean, if you play Las Vegas, normally it's like you're playing in some part of a casino somewhere, and it's like over 21, and it's all age restricted. And of course, Las Vegas is completely out of this world. It's like so bright lights and money and riches. And I saw 2 Elvises waiting across the road at the same time, next to each other. I thought, one of these people is an imposter. Like, really, I thought he was dead, but apparently not. But there's 2 of them. Honestly, it's not good. This sort of thing confuses a young man or an old one. So we're in the desert outside Las Vegas, which is like all ages, anyone can turn up. And yeah, it was great, apart from like heaps and heaps of sand and dust getting down your throat. But the fact that these kids, it's like they were more or less excluded from the mainstream, because there's not much DIY stuff goes on in Vegas unless you make it happen, and you can only make it happen in the desert. And it was like we were driving to it. What's the directions? We turn off at the 4th right after the sign that says whatever, and then there's a big track road, and then the next track that goes to the next right. You follow that for half a mile, and then we're driving along with it. Is this really? Is this? Are we being ad? You know, is this a laugh or what? And then like, there's someone there. Hey, over here. It's like, yeah, you're playing in this rock thing. Fantastic. Just really, just the energy and the togetherness, we got that together.
And you found out, have you found over the years, I feel like when, you know, before sat nav and all that sort of thing, and right, where's the venue? I don't know. We've been going around in circles. Right, stop and ask this bloke. Excuse me, mate, can you tell where blah blah? Yeah, you go 3rd traffic light, then you take the left after the traffic light, right and a roundabout, and then a second on your left, and that's the venue. Right, okay, cheers, mate. Anyone get that? No, right. No one's been listening. Not even. Yes. I mean, it's got to the point where we actually had to get a taxi to drive up.
Really? Yeah.
Prague, that was.
I don't know, we did it and we got the gigs. It's a sheet of paper that's all been misspelled, you can't quite read it, and there's a sort of drawn map of what X is the venue. Yeah. It's like, what's this road called? There's no road names on this map.
And there's X, and that's the city, and that's the... Good old times,
Brilliant. Interesting, you both picked something where you got kids who are, you know, sort of kept away from this music for whatever reason, you know, and being brought into it.
Well, I think the thing is with being Dick was like, you know, I'm going to go off beaming off your sort of thing for a minute, but I think with me and Dick was like, it's the first time we've had to sort of spend time together. But over all the years, I've been sort of watching, obviously, and listening to what he's been doing. Dick's been doing the same, but we've been going down these parallel sort of lines, you know, and all this, and it's sort of every so often it will meet in. but I think you'll agree with this. What I found with Crass was that the people we used to get at Crass gigs were the real fucking misfits. They didn't fit in. They couldn't afford punk rock clothes, so they didn't fit in with that. They couldn't afford the bondage trousers, they couldn't afford this. They couldn't afford. So they were the real misfits. They were I'm going to use terms that are now going to seem un-PC, but I can't say it in a way. The fat kids or the skinny kids like me with the sticky out ears who got the piss taken out of them at school. You know, the kids with spots or whatever, or blurber. You know, and they're the people who used to get the real fucking misfits, and they're the people who used to get through. And I think that's the same with Subhumans and
I think it's the same through punk rock generally.
Absolutely.
The major thing
once that snobbishness
was like anyone can do it, and if it appeals to you, being fat, skinny, whatever, you know, if you had a hard time at school from other people, well, I did, you know, I had a bit of a hard time for whatever reason, and like, I couldn't fight back, I didn't know how to, I didn't want to fight back, I wanted to like get on with everybody, and some of those people just wanted to take the piss, and it's just like, why are people like this? And then punk rock comes along and says, here's your empowerment.
Yeah.
You can like this, and all these other people who you didn't know before like this as well, and they're not make any judgment about you except whether you like this band more than this band or the other way around. Yeah. And punk rock became this unifying thing for a lot of people who felt socially excluded or just less of a person than they wanted to be.
Yeah.
And punk rock made me feel more alive, relevant, and
But I always felt more comfortable at DIY, if I can call it that, DIY gigs, rather than going to big gigs. Like, I always felt very uncomfortable. I remember being in toilets once and a gig, and it's Captain Sensible over there, and you know, I don't want to meet him because he might be a bit sort of standoffish. I mean, when I got to meet him later, he wasn't. But I always got that sense with that first wave of bands or whatever. It was once that second wave, but once we had started, Crass Culture, Subhuman, Conflicts, all that lot, and we started going to not proper venues, but little scout huts,
little halls,
that's when it really broke down the barriers.
People's back gardens.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's when it really broke it down, and I always felt far more comfortable being there.
Yeah, well it is, there's no bouncers, no, if any, security whatsoever.
Yeah.
And of course it goes along with the PA being a bit shit or not working, and things break down, but luckily the headline band can lend you this or that, and there was no sort of like, we're headliners, you go in a separate room and all this rubbish. And there was no division, and that was the breakdown of the early pre-punk rock and roll status game, that the whole thing was. You couldn't get into this game because we've got contracts, we've got all the gear, we've got the shiny adverts and front page of music press, and you follow it, and it's like you're looking at something that you've never been involved in. You could like some of the music, but you never felt I could do that. And then suddenly anyone could do that. And you wouldn't get all this fame and fortune stuff, but suddenly it didn't really matter, because the basic important thing was being able to play in front of other people and just to express yourself. And it just opened out so much.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, and also sometimes I used to go, even if I didn't particularly want to see the band or bands playing, I'd just go along to gigs just to meet people, just to socialise.
Yeah.
And quite often I felt, certainly Crass gigs, that the playing of music was secondary to the people milling around exchanging leaflets and, you know, handouts and badges and all that sort of thing, and swapping
information.
Because there was no internet in those days, so...
No, it was all fanzines and leaflets and BUAV and Animal Aid and all the animal rights stuff I got from leaflets coming through the post. Yeah. Really? This happens? I had no idea about vivisection. Anything like that. Then one of my mates said, I passed by a butcher's the other day, saw a pig's head in the window, and I felt violently sick. I thought, why? And then I thought about it. And I didn't instantly change to be a vegetarian then, but it's little moments like that, interactions with other people. Yeah. More than, well, no, not more than lyrics by bands, because that's where Crass came in for me personally. That's where you changed the whole ethos of punk rock from being suggestive and dreamlike to being realistic and full of actuality. Yeah. And that was a major turnaround. Didn't realise it at the time, it's all hindsight.
Yeah.
But when was it I started thinking a bit more about what I was writing? Is when you were seeing, school, army, church, and corporation deal, fucked up reality based on fear, for conspiracy to stop us feeling real. And it's just like, whoa, words like conspiracy hadn't really entered my head, let alone the concept of there being a system, and that it was all set against us. It's like, how does that, why is it all against us? It's like, because it makes us follow without thinking, and we fall into patterns like go to school, go to university, get a wife, get a job, retire, blah, blah, all the standards were all set, and it's like, it wasn't like that was our freedom and we had to work towards it. It's just like that was killing off the freedom of doing anything else whatsoever. That wasn't even mentioned. And then just you discover people doing similar things like living together that weren't families. They were just friends living together and sharing places. Then the nature of squatting and just discovering stuff by realising there was a lot more out there.
Yeah, and for me, you hitting on squats as well. Funny, I was talking to Mark yesterday about Cross Street and Black Sheep housing co-op. There's lots of housing co-ops as well in London. I mean, I never really got into squatting. Obviously, I was living at the Crass House. But, I hung around that
We all
area.
presumed that was a squat.
No, it was a peppercorn rent. It was paying a farmer £7, and all this sort of thing. Well, Penn got it in 1964 when nobody wanted those places. They were knocking them down left, right and centre. Nobody wanted them. Of course, everybody wants them now. But and I remember sort of hanging around. A lot of them were socialists and all this sort of thing. SWP and Marxists, and I sort of think I don't bother with that old rubbish. Fucking turn telly on. Let's watch the boxing. But I suddenly realised that thing never trust a hippie. Or hippies are shit and all this sort of thing. I was like, hang on a minute, just take a step back here, Steve, and think about this. Hang on, they set up Centrepoint, which was a charity to help homeless people. Yeah. They set up their own medical centres, they set up soup kitchens, they helped people find homes. They did all this and that, and all right. And as far as I'm concerned, the only difference between me and a hippie is, well, obviously the clothes. I fucking hated that fashion, but if it was one, but it was the thing that hippies seemed to be saying, we'd like a better life, please, is that all right? Whereas punks, we were saying, look, we want a better life. And if we don't fucking get it, you're going to be in trouble, mate.
Yeah, people are angrier.
Yeah. But
hippies are more hopeful.
I think there's always been that thing between it, so,
But there was a core of both punk and hippies that was actually doing things and setting things up. Being practical about it, using the system for what they could get out of it.
Yeah.
Not expecting the system to supply everything.
Yeah.
And then there's on the surface above that or below it, or whatever way you go, the hippies were all very much flowers and colour, and the punks are very sort of black and white and booze, and neither of those really reflected what was going on at the core of both things. Was a bunch of practical people setting things up on a DIY scale.
I suppose, Nick, it's a bit like, you watch those films, Swinging London, Swinging 60s and all this. Yeah. Well, I don't remember any fucking Swinging 60s going on. I just remember a bloody, stagnant.
Well, you were fairly young in the 60s.
Yeah, I know, but I still remember, and I remember him being Simon Templar and everyone wearing sharp suits and things. But I never really saw it where I grew up, it was like in factory just down the road and all this stuff. So, although what you see on the media, I suppose it's the same thing as the way that punk rock was portrayed. It's like being sick and spitting and blah blah blah. All right, some of that went on, but you talk to people who weren't into punk now, and they say, "Oh, punk is all that spitting." No, it wasn't. It wasn't like that. And it's the same with the hippie thing. It's the way you see on the way the media show is that sort of.
It's all flowers and bongos.
Whereas underneath it, as you're saying, was that subculture, which was really doing it, which is what I think our respective bands were involved in.
And there's people working outside of the system, basically.
Right, that's that sort of.
Life
two
and
legs together.
Life and souls.
Yes. And then there's the arseholes.
Then we got to get that. Is that your soul?
Yeah.
Is that my soul?
It's our soul.
That's our souls. See, this is two leg ends. Yes.
Fantastic.
Never face defeat.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, that's how street cred gone.
or increase.
Yes.
You never know these days.
So, what made you both want to be in a band? The classic question.
The money, the fame,
yeah. The stretched limo, the
This
girls,
interview.
the cocaine. Yeah. Rubbing shoulders with Brian Ferry down the Casbah or whatever bar it was, yeah.
Because it just seemed like a extension of, I don't know. Yeah, ignore that last sentence. It wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't an extension of anything. A chance to just shout and say something loud. I mean, I like writing. I like rhyming stuff. And then with a good punk rock beat in your head from what you listen to, you can write stuff and then make it scan. And then, I don't know what to write about at all. Wrote one called Mental Hospitals. I've never been to one. Yeah, just silly
That's
stuff.
surprising, actually.
It's where you sort of delve into yourself. But if you like rhyming stuff and you just think what to write about, you don't know. Which is the same process for every song ever. You don't know what you're going to write about. You just start. You got a good first line, you can probably get a whole song out of it. But to be in a band doing that instead of just writing poems or whatever, way progress. Fantastic. Because then you've got music to do it with. It's just creativity and it's just venting. This is like when I was 17 or whatever, and venting at 17, you don't even know you're doing it. You're just shouting and having a good time with your mates.
Yeah.
And then later on, much later on, you might get paid for doing it. You might get some gigs, but that comes later on. The initial thing is all about self-expression.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the same with me. I mean, I just sort of, I didn't know, I didn't have any idea of how I was going to do it. I couldn't play an instrument. I didn't even know how where you bought a guitar in Dagenham, where do you buy a trumpet, how do you play it. I thought to make music, you had to read music and all this sort of stuff. Well, punk rock got rid of that.
Yeah. Woolies was selling guitars for 26 quid.
But I didn't know how you played it, and...
That's why you were a singer.
So, yeah, well, absolutely. So, and like you, I was always into writing, and prose more than poetry. From the books I'd read. But then what I realised was that probably, I was still living, everybody knows, do they still living, everyone knows that bloody song. And yeah, that was just a primal scream. That said everything I wanted to say about what I felt as what I'd been through and what I was going through. The authorities, the teachers, parents. I didn't have a very good family. Parents, my older siblings. All of them on peer pressure. I remember sweating to buy the latest pair of jeans that came out. The fashion thing that I was into before punk rock. And that was a heavy thing you had to, otherwise your mates would take the piss out of you. Scraping them, having to work at this shit fucking boring job just so I could go down the pub on a Saturday to listen to the band play. And once punk rock came on, I was like, right, I don't need to do all this, I can wear whatever I want to, and if anyone takes this, that's it, but I feel free. And plus, if people are crossing the road to get away from me on the other side, even though I'm not a violent person, that's brilliant as well, so that's having an effect in some way. The fact that I had really bad acne at the time, that was punk to me. I've got spots, you haven't. I sort of did it that way, which is the Andy Warhol thing.
Well, so if people take the piss at you because you look straight, it was like embarrassing. If people take the piss at you because you look like a punk rocker, fuck you, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's working.
I'm removed from whatever your mindset is right now. I'm a punk rocker. I've got my bubble and I'm in it.
Yeah.
And people say it's not all about fashion. And it wasn't all about fashion, obviously, but how you looked at the age of like 18 or whatever as a teenager, it did matter because that outward appearance contained your safety net, your own personal safety net against the world, even though you were actually in more danger of being hit and taken the piss out of. Yeah. That kind of didn't matter because your mates were relatively the same as you.
Yeah. And that, what you're saying, is going back to what we were saying about, the end of Down syndromes, and you saying, people are frightened of the unknown and the strange. And that's exactly what was happening, because I'm it's a bit off beam here, but I was talking to Ruth from Hey Idle Room. A few years ago now, we had to do this talk thing, and I said, Ruth, you know, how old were you when you was out on the road performing? She went, I was 15.
15.
And I was like, fucking hell, imagine someone would you let your 15-year-old daughter go out, you know, in a transit van, to be abused and spat on, or probably thumped by 20 to 30-year-old blokes, because that's what was happening.
They were getting a not a stick.
30-year-old blokes
because they were
beating
women
up
in
kids.
punk rock.
I mean, I hope those people, you know, now think, oh my God, what did I do? Yeah, what did...
Right.
Happy now, are you? You know, so I think that's all part of it. That you know, and I think people forget these days that, you know, if you put a bit of colour in your hair, which I had in those days, or you wore something slightly different, you know, you were probably going to get a fat lip.
Yeah, there's parts of Warminster we just couldn't walk around on a Friday night because it's a squatty town. They beat up anyone.
Yeah.
Well, the punks, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's why I was in a band, because they're not on right about things like that, and you know. Excuse me. You're a fidget arse, aren't you, when you get going?
Hey,
You're a fidget arse when you get going, aren't you?
I don't know what to say to that.
Yes, well.
No.
So what inspired you, you know, there's like a real flurry for both of you, you know, when you discovered that you were going to be in a band and start writing songs. What inspired you to write songs?
I think for me it came from, well, obviously my upbringing. I wanted to say something, and I wanted to, I don't know, maybe if someone else read my words, maybe it inspire them to pick up the pen and start writing, you know. Or if I wrote something they didn't agree with, they'd then come and talk to me about it, you know, not beat me up, but, you know, talk to me about it. And I think, you know, really what I was writing about, and still continue to, I hope this is keeping on the same, you know, on the question, but what I've always been about is just the injustice of life that's gone on and continues to go on, and that comes from reading books like Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, or you know, Kess. You know, I mean, what an amazing book that was, because at last it's not all swallows and Amazons, or, you know, these grammar school kids coming from prep school or whatever, you know, and going into magical lands. No, this is about a kid at a comprehensive school, which is exactly like the school I went to, and that's why thousands and thousands of kids all over England went for that. And the idiots put it on the curriculum, on the school curriculum. So you was able to read bits out of it in the class, hoping you'd get to the swearing bit, you bastard. You know, and then later on films that I was watching, you know, like The L-Shaped Room, or certainly A Taste of Honey, which is a very underrated film, you know, where, you know, a schoolgirl gets pregnant by a black sailor. He fucks off back to sea. Her mum, you don't know if her mum is a prostitute or not, but she fucks off with some bloke, so she's on her own. She ends up living with a gay bloke. Made in 1960, whatever it was, and the injustice of that, you know, and films like, you know, a lot of the 60s films you'll see where a lot of it, the girls get pregnant, and in those days abortion was legal. So there's a lot of backstreet abortions going on, and a great film is Up the Junction, where there's an abortion, you know, and it's or you know, abortion has been induced, but it actually happens in the bedroom. And even if I see that clip without seeing the rest of it, it's still, I'm just in front, and that's the sort of injustice I'm on about. And the fact that if you, in those days, if you came from the working class, you were going to end up in a factory, or, you know, whatever. If you passed 11 plus, you stood a better, you might be the foreman at the factory, and it's just all of that. And the fact that, sorry, I'm going on a bit here, read Charles Dickens, child exploitation, homeless people, soup kitchens, prostitutes, blah blah blah, wars, killings, murders, and that was written in 18, whenever it was, 60 far. And what's happening today? We've got child exploitation, sweatshops, blah blah da, and it's all changed so much for the better. Except now we can do it quicker on the internet.
That's amazing. That's the only thing that's really changed, is the nature of communication of facts. and knowledge
Yeah.
of what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's kind of ironical, if that's the right word, that the more we know, the less things change. Like everybody is now free to find out all about human trafficking, war, exploitation, starvation, disease, climate change. There's the list of ailments and wrongs going on the planet is the longest it's ever been. The knowledge that's available is the most it's ever been, and yet the people in charge are the least caring about all of it and causing more of it. So, I mean, all these things have been going on within the boundaries of technology that we've progressed to in the last 200 years for like ever, basically. It's all part of society the way it goes on. People will exploit other people. Apparently it's human nature. I don't like that human nature argument at all, because if it is, let's change human nature. We're the ones in charge of our own nature, right? You can't just say it's all in the genes that we're bound to want to hit other people at some point in our life, because I don't know anybody who likes hitting people or who likes exploiting other people, but it's all set in the social value systems that we get fed into, or get fed to us, mostly by power-hungry and money-hungry people who run media corporations, who influence the nature of governments. That and the Etonian school system, and so on and so on. As to what made me want to write songs, that's a hard one to answer. It was like the more I found out, the more a rhyme about it or a line about it would come into my head as I was like cycling home from work or whatever. The chorus of Religious Wars was like pounding through my head as I cycled back from work one day. I went straight in and wrote it down. In the name of God, they left you to die. Just one line. It's like, right, get something out of that. And you don't have to go through a religious war to know things exist. But part of writing a song is to write something that reverberates with where the words actually. Otherwise, we'd all be doing lectures, or just writing poetry or writing prose in a quiet room somewhere. And so part of the singing is the music that goes with it and makes a chorus or a good line more pleasant, more effective to deliver. What made me do it is just I really liked doing it, and I liked the end result of what came out of it. The songs, the content, the lyrics developed as I matured in my head, or my thoughts matured, or whatever. I mean, songs like Animal, or Jugs of Youth, or New Age, or stuff like that, they're not really serious. Then there's a whole bunch of songs about death. We're supposed to, I don't know what caused me to sing so much about death. Like the word dead or dying occurs like we counted them up once. 50 times on the Daily Country Died album. You know, dying world, I don't want to die. Dead, all gone dead. It's like, blimey, you're so young. Why do you think about death so much? It's because like, I don't want to die. It's like, why do people join the army? What makes it that you can be sent off to die for people who get nowhere near it? Whose decision is this? So it's really just fighting against being controlled.
And it's funny that those people that, you know, we talk about the Etonian thing and the people in control and all this sort of stuff. You know those arseholes who've now made it so we can't protest because they don't like, they don't like the noise or whatever. Fuck off, right? You arseholes. If I want to say something, I'll fucking say it, and that's one way you can do it is through music, because you'll never stop me doing that. They can't stop me. But that being said, it's the way that these fucking nutcases up there will not believe that there's something like climate change going on, that it needs to be sorted. They won't fucking do anything about it. And yet we're seen as the weirdos, or the troublemakers, because we're saying, that's wrong, stop it. Look what's happening.
Yeah, well, the fact is, as Mark pointed out a few weeks back, it's like it's time they started listening to us.
Well, yeah.
Because they keep telling us what to do, they keep being wrong, they keep lying, they keep not having the solutions. Their solutions don't work. It just creates more problems, more evil, more suffering, and then you get a place like this, and this is how society would be better run. just allowing people to make their own choices, develop their own ideas, support them when they need it, tell them off if they're doing something wrong that upsets people. You don't have to put people in prison to correct the way they behave. You have to make them realise there are better places to be and better mindsets to come from that will stop them behaving like that in the first place. Maybe that's just psychiatry or therapy, but it could also be witnessing communities interacting with each other such as this. And it's all a bit idealistic, but why not? Because idealism solves more stuff than the lack of idealism.
If it weren't for idealism, then you wouldn't have all those, because I used to read poetry and stuff like Walt Whitman and stuff like that. He was writing about the Civil War in America, plus he was homosexual, their terms, not mine. All this, or some of the books, or some of the plays or some of the films we've seen, or even some of the bands that have written music that have inspired me. If it weren't for that idealism, look at David Bowie, Moon Age Daydream. What the fuck is that about? But I knew what it meant because he was talking to me, and I knew exactly what that was on about when I was at school. Not wanting to be there, playing truant or whatever. He's going to look after me as David, sort of thing. So.
What's a special song that you've written that really means something special to you, and why is it special?
It's a song I wrote called SAD, which actually stands for SAD, which is Seasonal Affection Disorder, which I realised I had. I thought I had that, but then I realised I had slight depression. I don't call it depression, I call it desperation. I just get these times when I just want to go on a duvet for 4 days and cry, and everything I've done is shit. Everything I'm going to do is shit. Anybody who listens to what I've done are fucking delusional because it's all crap. I'm a complete and utter wanker, and that's what I wrote about in that. But the scary thing is that when you're in that, I don't know if either of you two have experienced it, but when you're in that really dark thing, when you're crying, but at some point you've got to stop crying, and then what are you going to do? You've got to do something. Otherwise you don't do something which is worse. So I wrote that, and I'd actually written that in 1986 or something, but I'd never used it for Crass because Crass had finished, but I tried to record it, but it never came out right. It wasn't until Slice of Life came along that it actually worked for the first time. And since I've been performing it, a lot of people have been coming up to me and saying, "Did you write that about my son? Because he's 16 and he goes into depression, or my husband's clinically depressed and he's taking medication." All these people have come up, so I know exactly. And that song for me, out of all of them, I know I Was a Living was a brilliant song, and all, but that one for me is the one because it's talking about now, and it's and I think it's something that everybody can relate to. So that's
nice.
Yeah.
I'm stuck between 2 songs. I've just been a quick riffle through the files that don't exist in the head of all the songs. There's they're both Culture Shock songs. You Are Not Alone is one of them, which was a song that I wrote while I was in Subhumans, and it was the first song I wrote that was that dared to say something like "You are not alone." On this hit this like emotional content that wasn't in Subhuman songs, not to that extent at least. It was so much removed from what I was usually singing that I deliberately kept it aside until Culture Shock came along and provided, I guess, a sort of space to sing that sort of thing in, because the music was less abrasive or slower or more spacious, whatever.
Yeah.
But that was the sort of music I could fit that song to and not feel it was contextually too weird. So I actually was setting up my own barriers to singing it until Culture Shock came along, which is a strange thing. It hasn't really happened in any other songs that I've thought, I can't sing this in this band. It doesn't work. Because as the title suggests, it's all about talking to strangers, expressing yourself, going for that hopefulness you might get on, and it's better to say something than not say it than hide feelings, better than bottling it up. and even if they might be belligerent, but then again they might be the person who needs you as a friend.
Yeah.
It's hopeful, more hopeful than any other song I've written, and that's why it's special really, because it speaks out, it's saying, it's doing the thing that I don't like listening to, you know, save the world and just all the positive. Don't worry, be happy. It's like, don't tell me not to worry and be happy, mate, because that just pisses me off. Don't know why, but everybody's happy. No, they're not. No, they're not.
And then it appears on a car advert.
So you were not alone. Didn't go to like everything's great. Didn't go to the stupid, superficial, plastic level of happiness, but it did seem. It's just saying there is hope. There are other people who feel just like you.
Yeah.
And so, don't worry, be happy.
Yes.
Same conclusion, but a more subtle way of putting it, perhaps.
Yeah.
And the other song was ISD, which stands for not LSD. The I looks like an L, a small L, ST. Is it about drugs? No, read the lyrics.
Yeah.
Instantaneous spot.
Instinctive.
Instinctive spontaneity drive, which is what I think is the root of all creativity. It's like it's instinctive, it's spontaneous, and it's call it a drive. Why not?
Yeah.
And that song, it was written with pen to paper in the dark, in a van, travelling from one gig to another on a tour in Canada in 1985.
Yeah.
And I was fairly well out of it on whatever the driver was taking to stay awake.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
And it was like pen to paper. I can't see, I can feel where the paper is, I can feel where the pen is. And it was just like, don't leave the page. So you've got this far, fingers going where your pen is. First line there, then get to the finger, move it down a little bit and do the next bit, then turn over. Went off like 6 pages or something. And that song, it just wound on and on about all sorts of things, but it was about the nature of writing things and being a singer and how other people see singers and how you're given way too much credit for supplying answers that are already in people's heads. They just need somebody to put it into words, because some people obviously are better than words at words than others, and that's what the job of a writer is, really, is to share stuff with, wake up thoughts in other people's heads that is already there. People say, you're such an inspiration, you really said what I said. It's like, that's exactly, there it is. I've said what you were thinking, but it wasn't me that did it, you had it already. It's just opened it up a little bit, which I'll take credit for a little bit, but don't think I'm the source of all fucking wisdom or anything, because that ain't the case.
That's really interesting, because that's leading up to, and I'm sorry I'm doing your job here, but that's leading up to that question that's come up about, how do you deal with people come up to you and saying, thanks for changing my life, sort of thing.
How do you deal with compliments, basically?
That's it, and I tend to do it in sort of different ways, but, sometimes it can, you feel this overwhelming sense of responsibility has been shoved onto you, and it's like, God, no, I didn't do it for you. No, I wasn't. I'm just sitting there writing these things. If it moves you, that's fucking brilliant. I'm not dissing it at all. But please don't make it into this thing that I can't deal with.
No, the whole point, not the whole point, but a large point of punk rock was to get rid of no more heroes anymore.
Yeah.
And sang a band who then went on to act like heroes quite a bit, but whatever. The point was, it was all about equality and open access to everybody to do whatever. And of course some people stand out as being good or better, but that doesn't mean the person who appreciates the band doesn't have the same power as the person in the band to do exactly the same thing. And like I said, aside of ability to write and rhyme, and I could say everybody's got the ability to write and rhyme, but some people do it better than others. In the same way as I can't do anything that's practical in terms of, I don't know, cars or fixing stuff, or actually useful stuff. I can't do anything useful, basically, but I can write, so you end up writing. And
it's weird.
A plumber comes around and fixes the boiler because it's fixed. I'm not like, oh my God, that is so amazing. You have changed my life. Thank you so much. Have you got any other jobs you can do that I can buy from you? It's a silly example, but
It's weird because I've got this thing like I don't know how to change the washer on my taps.
right.
But I remember he used to play Elsie Tanner in Coronation Street. So that's going to be helpful, isn't it?
Well, it's because the bloke who does the plumbing isn't on the telly, see.
It's true. I've been caught.
But there's a gap in the market for a programme about people who can change washers and do plumbing. In this week's plumbing, what would you call it? Washer man.